My name is Jonathan Pierce. I've spent most of my life chasing cases that made sense on paper. Thefts, missing workers, disputes, those I could understand. But some places exist to remind you that understanding is a luxury. It started with a call from the city engineering department. A worker had gone missing on the overpass construction site on the east side of town. The project had been delayed repeatedly, safety inspections, budget issues, minor accidents. But no one expected someone to vanish mid-shift. I drove out as the sun was setting. The construction site was half finished, half ruined, the kind of place where steel beams jut into the sky like broken skeletons. Concrete pillars rose from the ground, some capped with temporary wooden platforms. Cranes swung lazily in the evening breeze, their metal cables clinking. I parked my car at the edge of the site. Workers had already left, and the gates were chained. But one path, narrow, muddy, led past the barricades. I followed it. The closer I got, the colder it felt. Not because of the air, but because of the stillness. Even the wind seemed hesitant here. I reached the section where the missing worker had been last seen. A scaffold leaned precariously over a deep drop. Footprints in the wet cement led to the edge, and stopped. No sign of a fall. No rope. No struggle. Just absence. I examined the ground below. Dirt disturbed, yes. But not enough for a body to have landed. It was almost as if someone had stepped through space itself. I walked along the incomplete overpass. The beams groaned under my weight, metal echoing through the empty expanse. Then I noticed something odd. The crane above, stationary for weeks, now had its hook swaying slightly. No wind. No operator. I squinted, trying to see the cab high above. The window was dark. No one there. I moved closer to the main office trailer. Inside, files and blueprints were scattered on the floor. Lights were off, but a faint hum came from a corner, a generator running silently. The room smelled of concrete dust and old coffee. Then I saw it. A single hard hat on the floor. Clean. New. With the name of the missing worker printed clearly on the front. I bent down to inspect it. Nothing else. No tools. No personal effects. Just the hat. The shadows were stretching longer now. I could hear distant traffic from the highway below, but it sounded muffled, almost as if the overpass was swallowing the sound. Then, from the edge of the structure, I heard a soft metallic clang. Not a crane. Not a falling tool. Something smaller. Something deliberate. I froze. The sound came again. A slow, rhythmic tapping, like someone walking on steel above me. And yet, when I looked up, nothing moved. I took a deep breath and started to take notes. Every detail mattered. Every footprint, every sway of metal, every sound. Because here, in the incomplete skeleton of concrete and steel, someone, or something, had decided that ordinary procedures no longer applied. And for the first time that day, I realized, I was not just observing the site. I was part of it now. Night had fallen. The sky above the half-built overpass was dark, tinged with orange from distant streetlights. My flashlight cut a thin beam through the fog, illuminating steel beams and wooden platforms. I started inspecting the area near the missing worker's scaffold. The footprints in the wet cement were gone, as if they had never been there. Concrete that should have held impressions now appeared perfectly smooth. I moved to the crane. The hook had stopped swaying. But on the support beams beneath it, I noticed scratches, deep, long, deliberate, etched into the steel. Too high for a normal worker to reach. And the pattern, it wasn't random. It almost looked like numbers. I leaned closer, tracing the marks with my fingers. Cold metal. sharp edges. No rust, no dust, freshly made. I kept moving along the overpass. The skeletal structure creaked under my weight. Each plank and beam seemed ready to betray me, to collapse without warning. And then I saw them. Tiny footprints. Barefoot. Leading along the narrow beam above me. Too small for any adult worker. Too perfect. I swallowed hard and aimed my flashlight upward. The beam ended in darkness. The fog above obscured the view. I could hear a faint tapping again, slow, deliberate, pacing along the metal. I checked my phone. No signal. No GPS. Not even emergency service coverage. I thought about calling for backup, but what could I say? Someone small is walking on the beams above me, leaving footprints that defy explanation. I moved back toward the office trailer, hoping for a better vantage point. As I approached, I noticed something else. The files on the floor were not scattered randomly. They were stacked in a pattern, each blueprint slightly offset from the other. A map, maybe? I tried to line them up. The lines formed the shape of the overpass, but with strange additions. Extra beams. Platforms. Walkways that didn't exist. I frowned. No engineer would have drawn this. No construction crew would have built it this way. And yet there it was, meticulously documented on paper. Then the tapping stopped. Complete silence. I strained my ears. Nothing. And just as I let out a shaky breath, I saw movement at the far end of the overpass. A figure. Tall, dark, standing perfectly still on a wooden platform that shouldn't support anyone's weight. I froze. Focused my flashlight. Nothing. Just darkness. I took a step closer. Then another. And the beam above me shifted slightly. I heard it, the softest sound of fabric brushing steel. I wasn't alone. And whatever was up there, it was waiting. The night was unnervingly quiet. The only sound was the soft thud of my boots on steel and wood, echoing across the incomplete overpass. Every step made the structure groan, like it was warning me to turn back. I decided to climb. The scaffolding led to the crane's platform, and from there, I could inspect the upper beams. Each rung of the ladder was slick with condensation. My gloves slipped occasionally, sending small sparks of panic through me. When I reached the platform, I froze. The crane cab, empty and dark, had scratches all along the edges of its metal frame. Deeper than the ones I had seen earlier. And again, patterns. Not random scratches. Numbers? Letters? Shapes? I couldn't tell in the dim light. I scanned the beams. The footprints were clearer here, small, precise, as if someone had walked carefully along the narrow steel, leaving no misstep. But there was no way an adult could have done it without falling. I crouched, moving slowly along one of the beams. The wind was picking up. A faint hum started somewhere behind me. Not mechanical. A low, metallic vibration that resonated through the steel. I stopped, trying to pinpoint the source. The crane hook swayed slightly again. Not with the wind. It was deliberate, subtle, as if nudged by unseen hands. I turned my attention to the scaffolding below. Something caught my eye, a rope. Thin, frayed, tied to one of the wooden platforms. It had not been there before. I followed it with my flashlight. It led to another beam, higher up. And there, scratched into the wood, were words. "Don't step off." I swallowed hard. The handwriting was small, precise. But the message was unmistakable. I turned to look at the edge of the overpass. The drop was steep. Concrete pillars rose from the highway below like jagged teeth. Any misstep, and I wouldn't survive. Another sound made me flinch. A metallic tap, high above, along the beams. I aimed my flashlight upward. Nothing. I moved cautiously, documenting everything. Every scratch, every footprint, every swaying hook. I could feel a presence. Not in the shadows, but through the steel itself, as if the overpass had become alive, guiding me. I reached the far end of the overpass. From there, I could see the ground below, dark, deserted, and endless. No lights from the city, no signs of movement. But then my flashlight caught something on the opposite side. A small object balanced on a beam. A helmet. Shiny clean. The name tag was unfamiliar. I reached for it. And as I did, a sudden gust of wind swept through the overpass, rattling metal and wood. I stumbled back, heart racing. When I looked again, the helmet was gone. I checked the ground. Nothing. The only thing left was the echo of the tap-tap-tap above me. The wind had picked up further. It rattled the steel beams, made the scaffolding groan, and whipped the fog across the half-finished overpass. Every sound echoed like a warning, every shadow seemed alive. I made my way toward the crane. The ladder creaked beneath me, and my flashlight barely cut through the thick mist. When I reached the cab, the controls were covered in a thin layer of condensation. But more disturbing were the scratches, numbers, letters, symbols, etched all over the surface. I ran my finger across one set of marks. They weren't random. Dates? Codes? Coordinates? Impossible to know in the dim light. I climbed onto the upper beams to investigate further. The steel was slick, cold, and the height dizzying. Then I noticed something odd: footprints. Small, deliberate, leading in a pattern I couldn't decipher. I followed them cautiously. On a plank near the edge there was a hammer. Clean and used, lying perfectly still. Next to it, etched into the wood: "Turn back before it's too late." I froze. The handwriting was neat, almost clinical, but the message was urgent. I scanned the area. No one was there. Then I noticed something at the far end of the crane's platform. A toolbox open. Inside, tools I didn't recognize. Some appeared normal, wrenches, pliers. But others were strange, jagged, asymmetrical, almost experimental. A soft tapping came from the beams above. Slow. Deliberate. I aimed my flashlight. Nothing moved. I took a deep breath and checked the platform. The wind shifted, and I heard it clearly now, a metallic hum, almost like the crane itself vibrating. But there was no motor running. Something wasn't right. The overpass was supposed to be abandoned at night. No crew, no security. And yet I wasn't alone. I moved toward the center of the crane platform. The floorboards here were scratched, not from tools or boots, but from deliberate dragging. Marks that indicated something large had been moved. And then I saw them, faint outlines on the steel. Handprints. Not human. Or at least, not like any human eye had ever seen. The tapping became a rhythm, like footsteps pacing, circling above me. I froze, realizing that even if I could see the source, it would vanish before I reached it. I tried to radio in, but the signal was dead. My phone had no bars. No GPS. Nothing. I was trapped. Alone. And whatever was moving up there wasn't planning to make itself visible. A gust of wind shook the crane. The toolbox slid toward the edge, landing with a clatter. And then, a sound I couldn't ignore, a metallic creak followed by a faint voice, almost whispered through the steel. "You shouldn't have come back." I froze. My flashlight flickered. And in that moment I realized the overpass wasn't just unfinished construction. It was a labyrinth. A place that had rules I couldn't understand. and I had just stepped inside. The night had deepened, and the fog hung heavy over the steel skeleton of the overpass. Every beam, every plank, every twisted scaffold seemed to watch me. I needed to get down. The way back was narrow, treacherous, and slick. Every step brought a new creak, a new groan of steel straining under my weight. Above me, the faint tapping continued, slow, deliberate, circling the platform like a predator. I reached the ladder leading down. I gripped the cold metal and started descending, one careful rung at a time. Halfway down, the ladder shook violently. Not with the wind. Not from my weight. Something else. I froze, heart hammering, flashlight beam trembling. Nothing. Just silence. I continued, moving faster now. I reached the first platform and glanced at the scaffold below. Footprints were carved into the wet concrete, small, precise, following a pattern I couldn't interpret. But no one was there. The fog thickened. Every shadow seemed to shift, forming shapes just at the edge of my vision. The crane hook above swayed again, slowly this time, almost intentionally. I reached the ground. Mud sucked at my boots. The overpass loomed above me like a steel giant. I looked back. The scaffolding, the beams, the crane, everything appeared normal, inert, abandoned. As if nothing had happened. But the hammer. The toolbox. The scratches. The strange symbols etched in the steel. I knew I hadn't imagined them. I moved toward my car. The wind died down. The tapping stopped. And then I noticed it, a single helmet, lying in the middle of the dirt path. Clean, untouched. Name tag worn off. I picked it up. Nothing inside. No signs of a struggle. No tools. Just emptiness. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. The overpass receded behind me in the fog. Headlights cutting through the night. But in the rearview mirror, I saw something I couldn't explain. A shadow, standing on the edge of the structure, motionless. Watching. I didn't look again. I didn't turn back. I don't know who or what had left the markings, the footprints, the warnings. I only know the overpass doesn't follow the rules of the living. And it's still out there, waiting. Somewhere along its steel and concrete skeleton, it will claim attention again. And when it does, there will be no witnesses,